The Huskers Radio Network Broadcast Center is sponsored by Acres, the Midwest premier John Deere dealer, supplying the equipment and service to advance agriculture and much more. Acres, solutions for every field. I'm Jessica Coody, and the newest class, the Nebraska Hall of Fame, Athletics Hall of Fame, has been announced for this upcoming fall. Ceremony will be held and to honor the newest inductees. And every summer, like we always do, we're going to spend some time getting to know or reflecting on the careers of these incredible Huskers. And what an athlete to start off with here for this class. And on her birthday at that, a former Nebraska volleyball star, Stephanie Thader. Stephanie, thank you so much for being here. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. What a great thing, and what a great way to remember my 54th birthday. Yes, I'm not afraid to say how old I am, but what a wonderful honor to be on here.
Well, congratulations. It was incredible when I texted you about doing this interview, and then when we were just chatting right now, you had mentioned it was kind of hard for you to accept. You're such a team person, but what was it like when you got the call and what the honor meant to you?
Yeah, so Keith Zimmer, who is currently, I believe, Associate AD, I hope I've got his title correctly. He leads one of his many endeavors there, leads the life skills program as well as the Hall of Fame committee, and he was my former academic advisor for the athletes back when I played. So he has had a long tenure there, and what a wonderful way to connect was he called or text and asked to get a hold of me and called me and shared the news, and so to hear about it from someone was actually much more meaningful. It's still meaningful regardless. It's what an honor that is, but it's much more meaningful to know it came from Keith Zimmer.
You were telling me that it was a little bit hard for you, the individual awards, for you to accept. And I think it's pretty fascinating. Can you take us through that and how you've worked through that?
Yeah. So, I was blessed to have I would say a wonderful career at Nebraska. If you unpack it, I actually had a near miss experience coming to Nebraska. That's a story that Coach Pettit shared, and it's kind of a funny story, but nonetheless, it came down to being evaluated by another coach that was on staff, and that coach saying, "Oh, I don't know if Stephanie's going to be in our program, if she can fit." And then he ratifying that, going down to see me and says, "No, she's exactly who our program is." So it actually, my story starts on a very shaky foundation, which I laugh about, but it was quite terrorizing when he told me that story. I had no idea for years. But it is a team sport, and anytime you spend time with any of the Huskers, former, current, and in the future, even the individual sports, I would be a betting woman that they would also obviously understand that umbrella of community that comes with success, and team sports have that to no end. When I heard about this award, of course I was grateful, but I'll be honest with you, it's still a little unsettling. There are so many people that have been positioned before me, after me, and during my tenure at Nebraska that have been so formative to my success. And it's actually quite uncomfortable to be singled out when I actually am a representative of other support that I received. They've made their decision. I guess we have to stick with it. But to honor that, I've actually asked and am in the process of asking former coaches and teammates to join me that evening. I just don't feel comfortable wearing the mantle by myself.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, you mentioned a little bit how you got here, but take us back to the very beginning. How did you get into volleyball? Why did that become the sport for you?
Well, those who know me back then, I'm 6'2". I say that now because only to tell you that my first team was a team of 7 siblings and 2 parents. I came in Missouri, and I'm third shortest out of 7 kids. So
wow.
6 foot. Meaningless in my family. It was shrimpy. We grew up with some hardships. I'm not afraid to say it. The resources were low, but the family dynamic was strong. And so when I look at how I was equipped to be ready to kind of wear that Nebraska jersey, really did start with that first team of mine, and that was from Union, Missouri. When I got to Nebraska, To be honest with you, I was a bit of a project. I was this raw athlete, and I have this, if I can find it, I'm going to bring it to the Hall of Fame evening. But Terry Pettit, one of the head coach there, and of course his tenure is just garnered. I can't even imagine, to begin to shed light on all that he's done for Nebraska volleyball. But he used to make us journal. And the first week of the journal of my freshman year in red letters says, "I want to go home."
Wow.
And I say that not to kind of, say, well, gosh, why did the committee choose me? Like, who is she? I say that because there is not one athlete that has not had to overcome adversity in this transition and during their tenure at Nebraska to make great things happen. And so I want to find that journal, because that was where it started for me, was to really embrace that I can do it. And with the solid help of many people, from the coaching, from the strengths and academics, mental health, all the people that wrap around our athletes to help them on their journey. That's where I started. So it was not easy. And I'm okay saying that, because I would like to keep this all very real for everybody.
I think that's so important. So how did it change for you from I want to go home to 3-time All-American?
Yeah. So any successful person will tell you it's a combination of challenge and support, right? And I think we see that in business, we see it in sports, we see it in parenting, and any endeavor that you find yourself in. For me, it was challenge and support. And so I was a freshman under 2 All-American middle blockers. I did not get a lot of playing time my freshman year. I did make some impact. But I wouldn't have had it any other way, because I had to battle that first year really against some talented players who were decorated. Virginia Sayre and Carla Baker were the 2 I was going up against. Now, my sophomore year, they graduate, and I get to start and start that wonderful career. But it was the people to the left and right and the person setting me that really was that foundation. So, think Val Novak and Nikki Stricker, and then Eileen Shannon and Chris Hall and Janet Cruz and all of the people. Becky Boley came in for me in the back row. So we had this community, and everybody played their role. I was just lucky to be able to stand on some of these powerful women's shoulders to, I guess, get some of these awards, but it really was a team effort.
Okay, so going back to even the decision to come to Nebraska, can you take us through that and the recruiting process and how you got from Union, Missouri to Nebraska?
Yeah, for sure. So I was on a club volleyball team, not unusual for our volleyball players, but my club was not as competitive, I would say, as what you would see from the upper echelons of the clubs that were training 7 days a week through their high school careers. I think mine trained 1 week in a month. That's what we were dealing with in my small town, right? I was fortunate to go to a national tournament, and of course we were raw athletes and we battled, and so we could go up against these clubs that were a lot more polished through kind of sheer grit, if you want to know the truth. And I was lucky to be seen that junior summer. And when I got back, I think that fall, I had 50 different colleges kind of, contacting you and reaching out. My high school coach, Greg Curran, I'll never forget the day where I was sitting. He invites me and my parents in, and he says, "We need to start talking about post-high school for Stephanie." Well, my family, you didn't think too far in advance. It kind of goes back to kind of survival mode that most of us were living in. I don't want to dim the light here, but it was the reality of kind of that atmosphere that I felt. So future orientation really did not make much sense for someone like me. He mentioned Nebraska, and I was like, what's going on? I don't know anything about this. Well, my mom had an 8th grade education. My dad finished high school, so I was a first generation college student. So to consider college, let alone a Final Four Division I, upper echelon volleyball, that was as far to the moon that you could get for someone like me. Luckily, they recruited me, called me, were persistent. I visited, and once you visit Nebraska, you don't want to go home. And another point is Lori Endicott was from Springfield, Missouri. She wore number 2, and she was the setter for Nebraska 4 years before, she graduated the year before I got there. When I got to talk to Lori and see her path and see that, I'm sorry. I'll get it together. Sorry. When I got to see what future looks like, and I didn't see that right away. I had to get here and I had to battle and I had to sort through some internal things, but the coaches never gave up, and they saw for me what I didn't see. And John Cook, who I cannot leave him out, he was one of the coaches that recruited me, not the one that didn't evaluate me appropriately, that was a different one. John wrote, this is back when they didn't have any digital recruiting and the texts and the Twitters and all the things, right? He sketched a locker, and it said, Thader, I'm sorry, this is ridiculous. It said, Thader, All-American, 90, 91, and 92.
Wow.
And sure enough, that's my career. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you got me emotional over here. It's just such a powerful story. I hope you don't mind me asking, just for if there's somebody listening that might, what you said, you hadn't seen a future, and then until you got here, for someone that might have that kind of similar, be in that similar situation, what kind of advice do you give?
Oh, good night. I am not the person to give advice. I am who was thankful to have been given advice. The only advice I will say, and it's really just kind of comes back to a quote that I have made into my personal mission, and hopefully this is advice enough, but I think it was Maya Angelou that said, when we cast our bread upon the waters, we can't know, and I'm paraphrasing, the people who will be impacted, because we will not see their faces, as we have been impacted from those people we have been benefactors of ahead of us. That to me is Nebraska volleyball, and that is life. And so position yourself to receive support from anyone and everyone who is kind enough to give it, but complete that cycle of investment. Once you understand that, then you have to complete the cycle by throwing that bread down the stream yourself. And so to me, if that is advice or more of a mission way to think about it, Nebraska pours into their athletes. We have donors, we have administrators, we have people behind the scenes, fans, my teammates who maybe they got hurt and they didn't get the awards, the walk-ons, but everybody contributes. And so they're poured into, but then they themselves get an opportunity to complete that cycle for the next underlings, the people who win the national championships in 95, as it were for us. It wasn't our group, but it was the people afterwards. So I don't know if that's advice, more how I unpack the experience.
Oh, that's great. What was it like playing for Terry Pettit? What made him such a revolutionary coach at the time?
Yeah, well, I think Terry is revolutionary in so many ways, and I don't even think I understood until even more after the relationship that you have with these people that have poured into you, because then you get to see them in different atmospheres, know a little bit more about them than where they were with the task at hand, right? Terry's, one of his fortes is, first of all, to give opportunity. He is very clear about equality and Title IX and how that's impacted his teams prior to all of the decades he's coached, and to give opportunities to people to compete and to be a part of a team and successful team. So that is something you kind of walk in this wonderful embrace that you get to be a part of. So that's huge. His other thing is his ability to train athletes, to look at them, see what they need to overcome, and help them with tools to overcome those things. Some of that is from the athletes agency, some of that's from the coaching, and some of that's from the support personnel that you'll find on college campus that I mentioned earlier. But either way, positioning an athlete to kind of not only recognize where they are, but the gaps between where they want to be, and then help them get there. To me, that sums it up. And it's not a pretty task, and it's not an easy task. And I always say, I was fortunate to get my jersey retired. I think it was 2008. And I just said, beauty is, life is beautiful, but people need to see the inner workings of what makes it beautiful. They need to see the behind the door stories of people and what they've overcome, adversities and stuff like that. To me, that's where the beauty is. But people show up, they pay the tickets, they watch the final product on the courts, and they have no idea the beauty that they haven't been able to witness that got those athletes and coaches there. To me, that's the wonderful thing, that teams get to keep all to themselves, those intimate stories and knowledge. And I think that's the beauty in sports and why people want to be a part of it, because they know those stories are there. They want to be privy to them. Some of them are just kept for the coaches and players. Yeah.
He's been quoted saying that you never had a bad game, a bad match, that you were always good or great, but never bad. Do you agree with that? How did you do it?
I don't agree with that. I was actually reflecting on that today. I remember a match, I wonder if it was BYU, and I was sicker than a dog, and I couldn't breathe. And as a middle, you are a part of every contact on that ball. You're flying around the court, and there's not one place you're not there. And I just remember I couldn't breathe. And I was like, this is a problem back in the day when volleyball matches went 3 hours, right? And I remember that. So he's kind to say that. I don't know if that's the truth. I did work hard. I tried to be kind to those around me, and through that, and a little funny, I tried to keep it light. But yeah, those are the things I know I probably did well, but he's gracious. So.
Well, you don't become a 3-time All-American without being somewhat consistent. So what went into that success or to your career that continued to build, and for you to continue to maintain that success and become that 3-time All-American that Coach Cook had said?
Yeah. I think the practices, the culture of the practices, and they're still that way, is if you could get through the practices and the weekly preparation and all the other stuff you're trying to balance outside of it, the games became just execution, right? I mean, the games were not harder than practice. Practice should have been harder than the games. The games were just putting it together. To me, it was the teammates. We had a fascinating makeup of players, and I always knew that when I was there. We had people who are now doctors and physicians and coaches and parents and all these things. But what you knew about them, each one of them probably had at least one endearing hardship story that they've overcome. And to me, those are the curiosities that keep me a little focused on my communities. Those are the people that I kind of gravitate to, the people that don't have it hard or easy, and they work hard to keep overcoming. I think it was an attitude of I was never good enough. I remember Natalie Williams was for UCLA Player of the Year. I ended up playing with her out on the Olympic team outside after Nebraska. And she was somebody who was we would battle, of course. She was not in my position. She was a right side player, but she was a National Player of the Year. And I would always tell myself, and I never told Coach this or what, but I would be like, what is Natalie doing now? If she's on the West Coast, what is she doing now, and what could I be doing now over in the Midwest? And then when we would battle, I just had that respect for people like that. So to me, that was the outlook I had, and I was just, like I said, I was coachable. It comes from having a big family. You just do it. Your parents told you to do something. You didn't wait. You did it. I was hard on myself. I never, a little too hard. Kathy Noth, the assistant coach, had to really kind of nurture me on that. She's like, you're your world's biggest critic. It served me well to get better, but it also can be a little tough if you let that go on a little. You got to balance that, right? So
absolutely. I feel you on that for sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
right?
so being that you have a perspective of Coach Cook, and he referenced the transition from Terry Pettit, and then when he took over and whatnot, but when before I ask you about his retirement, let's go back to when he was named the head coach. Did you have an inclination that he would go on to have the career and the success that he had here at Nebraska?
Yeah, because he recruited, we were the last class he recruited before he went off to get his head coaching experience and then came back. And I was gone by then. So we were fortunate to be recruited from him. And so we knew him. But then, of course, his group that he was able to coach directly, I was not a part of that group. once you meet John, it doesn't change. He's the same who he was to me back in 88, 89 when he recruited me that he is now. And I don't have the relationship that a Coach Pettit would with John, because they're extremely close and they've been, close for years. But once you meet him, you know that success is that's in his DNA, and self-improvement's in his DNA, and everyone that's going to work with him is going to have to buy into that, because he's going to lead them in some self-improvement way. He's an amazing coach, and there's nothing that shocks me with his career or what he did, because he was chomping at the bit to do that head coach, even in an assistant position, you could tell. And so he did it, and it didn't shock any of us, because he was mentored really well by Terry and some other of his mentors, I'm sure.
So he decides to retire and, went about it. He was just so strategic about it, knew who was going to be able to take over. How about as a former alum yourself to see Dani Busboom Kelly taking over, a former Husker leading this program?
Well, for anybody, that's a warm person that you want, that you're just already a green light on. But Dani's career as a Husker, but then as a coach, her success, there's nothing you can take away from her in terms of her preparation for that opportunity. So we were ecstatic. All the alumni were just loving that. And the next time I get to, in this fall, go back, I'll get to see her and I'll get to congratulate her personally. But we have a great sense of pride for any of our former peers that we've played with, didn't play with, they were before us or after. There's a great sense of pride in whatever endeavor they choose to do. It's a really cool network to have been a part of and to continue to be a part of.
I just got a couple more for you. I know that you came back and were part of the stadium match here and the record-breaking night, Nebraska, Volleyball Day in Nebraska. How do you reflect on that day? What did it mean to you to see that accomplished here with this program?
Yeah, well, first on the day, the logistics were so amazing. If you could be a part of that, there's no replacement. Watching it on TV or watching it, there's just no replacement for that. So I'm sorry you lost out if you weren't there, but that'll teach you a big lesson to not be absent next time, right? It was huge. There's not one player, I'll speak for myself, that wanted to be Merritt Beeson. I kept looking at Merritt walking down that tunnel and going, man, she is walking like a boss. And I just so jealous of her, because she just had her game face on. She was business, and she's walking that tunnel walk like nobody. I get chills thinking about it, because I just wanted to just go down there and take her jersey and say, spread out, youngin', I'm here. But we got to line the tunnel underneath with all the alumni and talk about cool. You're visibly seeing before the team's coming through all of your peers before and after you that you knew of, played with, or watched after you left. There is nothing like that, and that was power. So people above, they saw it on the big screen, but you don't feel what that's like until you're in the mix there. And then the alumni had their own section. And so I was fortunate to send, I collected 3 volleyballs, and I just threw them around the alumni section and just kind of stood up and said, these are mine. And with the pin and a bag, just throw them in the bag. And I would monitor periodically just to make sure I didn't lose those. And you don't even want to know how cool it was the next day in the hotel to look at the, I had signatures from the very first Husker team, all the way through the youngins, like, these balls are, they're really magical. And so that was really cool.
You probably sell those for a pretty penny.
Not nuts, but you probably could.
Okay, I feel like, I've been here now for a few years and just periodically being able to talk to alumni throughout the years, but then also the current Huskers. And talking to you today is a reminder of just the appreciation of being a part of this program and the women that came before, and you're very quick to point to those that laid the foundation. And so I think there is an appreciation for everybody that came through and played here. But why is it that this program has been able to maintain such success and be the premier volleyball program for so many years, so many decades?
Gosh, I'm afraid that question is above me, around me. I can't speak to that. I can tell you, just being on the inside, that I can't imagine, and I had opportunities to go elsewhere to different colleges, And I can't imagine having, I not once said, what if I went here? What if I went there? That never happened, even in that freshman year when I was battling for a position, because once you are accepted into that and invited into that, the university, the programs, whatever macro and micro level you find yourself, you get a real sense of pride. You get a real sense of stewardship. And I don't think I had an appreciation for that as a current player, because you're faced with the day in, day out tasks and duties and performance. But the older you get, you really do understand the stewardship of resources that goes into those programs. And that comes from donors and admin and fans. And there's a real sense of that with the alumni, because we were again, I bring it back, we were benefactors, and alumni are very sensitive about making sure those young players understand that, because they're just too close to the fire when they play. You don't get that lens until later. But we saw alumni, we saw Nancy Grant Colson, we saw Enid Schoenweis, we saw Gwen Egbert, all these alumni just coming in, just watching practice, and those names, we were like, at first I didn't know who they were, because I was from Missouri and I hadn't followed Nebraska until I was recruited. But then once I was there, I was like, oh my gosh, these are the people that are in the record books, right? So I think alumni, the university does well to have alumni back, because and John Cook was good, I think, after our Terry Pettit's era left, to just understand that stewardship and what's come before you. We don't own it. We are just stewards of it to pass to the next group. So, yeah.
Okay, so for our listeners and Husker fans, where are you now? What are you up to? You got a special shout out, right?
What'd you say?
You got a special shout out, right?
Well, I am Manhattan, Kansas, and I went back and I, planned to talk to Keith Zimmer about this, because I was spent a lot of time with him balancing the academics on the court stuff. But, I went back late and got a master's in counseling. And so I went into career coaching. I found myself as someone who has lived abroad playing professional ball and married to someone who moves frequently, that my career, I've had to navigate new environments quite a lot and quite quickly. I found myself to be very supportive of people who were in the same boat. So I worked recently with, university students for about 13, 14 years, and most recently military spouses, domestic and internationally, on their career coaching needs, because I could help them with those transitions because I lived them. I'm currently pulling back. I've pulled back this last year because my daughter has one more year of high school, so I want to be more available to her, and also volunteering in a community organization. I'm going to amp up. It just works with people who keeping them stable off the streets, and really just pouring in resources to them so that they can start to remove some of those barriers for their own success. So that's kind of something on my next chapter. But yeah, that's really it. So
that's amazing. But your husband, right? You gonna give a shout out to him?
Yeah, I would be glad to. Sorry, you queued it up and I didn't tee it up. You teed it up, I didn't hit it. So Clint Brown, he currently is, they have camps, actually football camps here at K-State, but he's really a really wonderful, I would say, balance for me. We have a shared background. Town. He grew up in Arlington, Nebraska, national championship team, but his story is so much more compelling than mine. So if you shout out, you want to do an old Tom Osborne walk-on story, he's it, because he ended up as a national championship, but he worked for it. And I really like that story. He can work with, walk-ons and the successful one, because he's lived all between. He's very humble. But yeah, so Clint, if you watch this or, and hear it, I love you and thank you for your support.
And y'all met here, right?
Yeah, we met at Nebraska.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, great stuff. Thank you so much for your time. I'll let you get out of here, but happy birthday and congratulations. And I know you'll be back here, right, October 31st and for the football game there on November 1st, right?
Go Huskers.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, bye.